I thought for my bird sketches I'd start with some monoprints. So printmaking process where you only make one image, and it's a drawing process, so you roll out the ink and then you draw your subject onto the paper and it picks up the ink, and it's just a really nice process because it leaves you with this really soft sort of furry line, and I find it's quite immediate, and it's quite forgiving in that you never quite get what you really want to, so you have to accept that there's going to be incidental marks that you weren't expecting, so that need to get anything perfect is sort of negated. So these are just a few. These ones are quite old ones, and I've worked back into these ones with some oil pastels. These were illustrations for some Aesop's fables that I did. My work has always kind of spanned illustration and fine art, and sits somewhere in between. Never really quite know exactly where it should situate itself. So you can see on the back of these I've got the drawing, and you can see the ink that it's picked up from the plate. This one I've worked with multiple colours. They're not always, these ones aren't, I'm not showing you them as really good examples of my monoprinting. They are just my monoprinting. This one I've worked back into, not particularly successfully, with some watercolour. A lot of them could do with further work, further refining of some of the detail. I'm not a purist when it comes to using a particular medium. I tend to use, most of my work is mixed media. I tend to start off with something and then add other details to it in different media. Ink and pastels and watercolour and different types of dry media. Some razor bills that I saw when I was at Skopum Island. A few more that I worked back into with watercolour. That one's worked back into with pastels. These ones were a way of getting me back to drawing after I broke my wrist about a year ago, just over a year ago, and I found it really difficult to draw afterwards, and these ones were sort of getting me back into drawing without being too precious about what my drawing was going to be like, and I found it very good for that, actually. As I say, it's quite a forgiving process, and you kind of just have to accept that there's going to be things that you didn't expect, and it's not going to be exactly as you wanted it to be. So I do like these drawings. I like these marks that you get. They're not too detailed. I have my go-to images as well. There's go-to birds that I usually, if I'm having to do a demonstration or something like that, I tend to draw a crow or a cormorant, because I know them. I've drawn them many times, so that I can usually come up with a reasonably crow-looking like bird or a cormorant-look like bird. These are some swifts that I did for one of my monthly focuses. In case you don't know, each month in my newsletter I focus on a particular bird and a flower, and I write a little ebook around both of those things, and last year I focused on the swift. I can't remember which month, but it was probably a summer month. I usually add poetry and information and things to it, and I had intended to do guillemots and razor bills, but there's very little poetry. I tend to try and research public domain poetry, but I found very little about razor bills and guillemots, so I didn't pursue it in the end, but I'm still working on that one. Again, these guillemots were when I was, although they do nest on the coast here locally, they nest in abundance at Skocum and Skomer Island, so I was able to see them quite close up there. I make lots of drawings and photographs of them, although these were made in the studio, not at Skocum. Back to cormorants. This one is one that I've worked back into with some pastels, and this one the same. So I hope you enjoyed a flip through some of my monoprints. Monotype, it's actually called monotype, this process. Monoprint is when you take it from a plate, when you take an image from a plate. Monotype is when there can only be one made, so it's like a drawing process. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll share some sketches of some birds in the next few days or weeks. So you can see the difference between my monoprints maybe and some of my more illustrative watercolours. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll subscribe.